Go.
Streaming from South Africa to the world. This is the Stonks Go Moon podcast. What just happened? We break it down so you don't have to.
Welcome everyone to the Stonks Go Moon podcast. My guest today, none other than Susie Stocks. I'm using a pseudonym because I'm not allowed to publish her last name or surname, and I'm not allowed to tell you where she works. All I can say is she works for a Nasdaq listed company. Susie, welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having me.
A bit of mystery is always a good thing, I guess. There's a lot of people wondering what this pod is going to be about. Truth be told, I don't know. We'll sort of find our way through it. I mean, you have an extremely interesting Twitter bio. I mean, basically it says that you get paid to read filings for a living. And then I'm sure that's a simplistic way of putting it. But let's start from the beginning. How did you end up at this as a career choice, and what got you into this?
Sure. So investor relations was totally foreign to me. I didn't study finance or business or anything in college. I started off studying human physiology because I wanted to go to med school, and poli-sci because political science was just very interesting to me at the time. After college, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. So I was doing consulting work for a bit, which was a lot of fun because I got exposure to different industries and I got a sense of different cultures and different work environments. And through that, one of my clients was a real estate investment management firm. And that's how I got into IR, but that was on the private side. So private IR is vastly different than public IR. And I transitioned to public IR a few years ago, and I've really enjoyed it. But it's quite funny because a lot of people still don't quite understand what it is. And my mom's hilarious. She runs around telling people oh, my daughter's a finance analyst. And I'm like, no, that's not what I do at all. But mom, as long as you want to brag about me, that's fine.
Well, I mean, you've got over 10,000 Twitter followers. So there's people that follow you, right? So when I Google company filings, it says from Investopedia, a filing is when a legal document becomes part of the public record. Anyone can read a filing. As you might imagine, a filing is an example of something being put on file. You can take part of the physical act or filing by organizing documents in separate files. So basically, this is with the SEC, this is public knowledge, this is public domain. And I mean, you get paid to read that. That's quite interesting.
I mean, as you said, very simplistic way of putting it. But
what is the highbrow? Let's forget the layman's terms. What is the highbrow definition there?
Of investor relations?
Yes.
I mean, it's everything you would think of. So our investors, as you noted, we're listed on the Nasdaq. So most of our investors they're not high net worth individuals like I was used to on the private IR side. For public, it's mainly the big institutions that you hear of, right? It's State Street, it's BlackRock, Vanguard, and you have active and then you have passive investors. So you mainly deal with your more active investors who they're not ETF based, right?
Yes.
They're actually allocating certain percentages and they're looking at your financials, they're looking at your management team, and they want to know what's going on. So you pretty much have to communicate and be able to effectively communicate what's happening within your company, both on the finance side and also on the technology side. We're a tech company.
Yes.
And so you have to be able
the plot thickens. Sorry, the plot thickens, but obviously Nasdaq, that's self-explanatory.
Yeah. Sorry.
I'm trying to figure out, because when I Google you, there's not a lot that comes up. Is that by design, or is it something that you're trying very hard to keep under wraps, what it is, who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is a little different. So it's usually quite easy to find me. But yeah, I don't want anyone thinking I'm speaking on behalf of my company. I never talk about my company in general or any of my prior companies. I'll try and answer or address questions I get from followers or friends, but if it pertains to my industry, I try and steer clear. I just don't want anyone getting lines blurred thinking I'm
actually very good advice because of insider trading and stuff like that, which these days it seems like if you're a politician, it's just called trading.
Yes. Good way.
What is how important is our filings when it comes to like the buying and selling of stocks? Because I sometimes, from following you on Twitter, see you post like, if you're not keeping an eye on X, then you should be keeping an eye on X. And it's sort of not directly telling you, but it's indirectly saying, hey, just sort of. And I'm assuming that's something that you're getting from reading the filings.
Yeah, I try and since I work in IR, I know a lot of information oftentimes is buried in footnotes, right?
Yeah.
You have to disclose pretty much everything. The SEC will ding you. They'll know if you're not disclosing something.
I'm assuming except if you're Elon Musk, then you can basically do what you want.
He's on his own. He's in his own world. So no comments on him. But
but it's full transparency. You have to disclose everything.
You do. And if you disclose it one quarter and you don't disclose it the next, they'll notice. Or, if you change your disclosure just slightly, they'll notice and they'll say, why aren't you disclosing this anymore? Or you need to start disclosing this. And so a lot of times when you have to disclose something, it'll get buried in the footnotes, right? Like you have to read the footnotes. That's like my biggest tip is like read footnotes. It's very boring, and that's why on Twitter, very simplistically, I say I get paid to read filings, because IR is such a reading intensive career, and you read so much, not just about your company and what sell side is saying and what buy side is saying, but also like your peers, your customers, competitors, right? So it's across the board. You have to kind of know what's going on with all of those, within each of those, and be able to speak to that. So that's why it's so important to read everything. And most people don't like to read, and I don't blame them. It can
99% of people, we are living in a culture where everything is YouTube shorts or TikTok videos in 15 seconds. And that's why I found your profile so fascinating, is because I studied law, and as anyone that studied law would know, the case notes are the most important, and those are at the bottom. And if you like to read, then law would also not be for you. You would hate it, because it's a lot of reading in the library, sitting and reading, because that's the only way that you can basically take all that information in. And how large is that? How large, like you say, you work through a filing? How much is it? How many pages are we talking about?
Oh, it really depends on the company and where they're traded at. So I do have some friends who ask me about OTC stocks. I used to trade OTC a little bit. I still don't quite understand.
That's over the counter, right? Over the counter stocks. Okay, for those not familiar with the lingo.
Yeah. And so, by the way, Memphis is coming up right now. So you will see him in just a second.
Memphis is the cat.
Memphis is my cat. Yeah.
That's the famous cat I've been hearing about and seeing on Twitter.
I was going to say, as you can see, he's blind. And so when he hears voices coming out of my computer or anywhere in my vicinity, he'll come over and he'll just I want to say stare, but he doesn't have eyes, but he'll just look in that.
Made this podcast 1,000 times better.
Yeah. But it can vary greatly. And it can, they can be, 50 pages. It can be hundreds of pages. And especially with filings, a lot of times they'll add amendments or they'll add appendices. And so there's even more to read. And it's a lot.
To that point, is it possible that they can try and bury something? You know what I mean? It's like inside there, maybe hide it or maybe obscure it, and then so as to we are transparent, but You know what I mean? It's just like, it's so much information in there that you sort of have to know what you're looking for.
100%. You are so right. So last week, I think in particular, or the week before, there was a stock that was trending on Twitter, and everyone was running around. They had essentially pulled one of the bullet
I saw
points.
your tweet. Yeah.
They pulled one of the bullet points from the press release. And the press release, that bullet point essentially said something to the effect of, 150 million in cash equivalents and investments, right? And to me, I'm like, that's weird. No one ever like advertises like cash. Usually you'll say cash and cash equivalents. You wouldn't say cash and cash equivalents and investments.
Yeah.
So everyone kind of just took that 150 and was running with it on Twitter, like, oh, they
because
have
it's a sexy, it's a sexy number, right? We all have like big number,
They don't need cash, they have that much. But when you actually looked at the filing, like that 150 million number was from September 30th, again, also included investments. And so like when you actually look at their financials, you can see, I believe it was between 70 and 80 million actual cash that they had. And cash equivalents, not including the investment component. And then they had also disclosed within a footnote that following, the financials that were published on September 30th, they had made a principal note payment of around like 16 million. So it's things like that within the footnotes that you look at, like subsequent events to see, okay, what has actually happened since they filed, and are these numbers true, or are they like dated or a little stale at this point?
And we all know what happened to the share price in the last 2 weeks. Without giving too much away, any interesting filings that are coming up, maybe in the next quarter or running up into the end of the year?
For my company or just in general?
No, just in general. Wouldn't want you to talk out.
In general, I can't say there is anything in particular, especially towards the end of the year. Sometimes it goes a little
quiet.
Stale. Yeah, it's kind of quiet. There are a few IPOs still, I think, in the works. My company also has something going on.
Careful now, careful. Let's not go there. What IPO are you most excited about? Forget it. It's like what IPO is Susie the most excited about, and why?
I don't know if there's anything in particular I want to say like upcoming I'm excited about. I'm always looking at, well, since I'm in tech in general, I try and look at the EV sector. I like solar. I try and be like more forward thinking, like what's maybe not very like sexy right now or making a ton of money right now, but 5, 10, 15 years, everyone's looking for like the next Tesla, right? But there are some things that recently have like other IPOs that recently happened that I just like personally like because I have my own personal interest in. And so that's what I also recommend people, don't just look for something that you think the masses like, but what are you also interested in? Because then you're actually engaged, right? And you want to know what's going on. So you've probably seen, I talk about Dutch Bros a lot, which was public about 2 months ago, ticker Bros. And
how can you not like that? How can you not?
Right? That's like meme stock waiting to happen.
Exactly.
But I love Dutch Bros. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
A little bit.
It's a coffee company that started in Oregon, and I have ties to Oregon. So that was something that was already on my radar. And I'm like, oh, I love Dutch, like I love the coffee. So like I'm buying into this IPO and I've loved it. So I kind of keep an eye out for things that I have like a personal interest in myself as a
That's
consumer.
actually very cool. Susie, thank you so much for joining us today. I want to say, usually this is the point where I say, where can people find you? But I'm not going to do that. Just go and look for her at Twitter, Susie Stocks. And thank you so much for the job and the hard work that you put in for us over on Fintwit. And but I mean, anytime you want to come back on, you're more than welcome.
Well, thank you. Anytime you have questions, I'm more than happy. It's funny, people ask me questions about companies and I'll answer them. I'll try and look at the filings. If I'm not in it, I don't really care. I'll look at it. People have been asking me about any a lot lately. I'm not in it right now, but if you guys have other questions or if you have other questions on companies for filings, I'll look at it. I love it.
That's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. To our listeners, peace, love, and prosperity. And we'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.